how will Kyle Shanahan incorporate Trey Lance into the offense this year, if at all? Will the Niners defense and offense actually bounce back to 2019 form following pretty devastating and injury-plagued 2020 season? Then can the Niners run game still be as potent with a new rotation of running backs? We'll discuss all these questions and more on today's preview of the San Francisco 49ers. It's 2021 preseason time. We're previewing all 32 teams to get you set up for mid-September. So let's kick it off and start talking about 49ers. Let's set the stage, look back to 2020, and kind of discuss our preliminary kind of key takeaways from last year. And I think it was, pretty dominated by injuries. And that's kind of a common narrative that, we're kind of always talking about on a team by team basis as we go through these team previews. But the Niners were certainly one of the most ravaged teams out there on both sides of the ball. Jimmy G only played a handful of games. Nick Mullins played the most games at quarterback. CJ Beathard was also in there playing a couple games. The entire backfield was constantly rotating through different starters. All of them got hurt throughout the course of the season. Jerick McKinnon was in and out. Tevin Coleman was in and out. Raheem Mostert was in and out. Jeff Wilson was in and out. The offensive line started to get dinged up. The defense was just absolutely ripped to shreds. And of course, that was one of its primary strengths in 2019 and was certainly not so last year. Nonetheless, unlike many of the teams that we've talked about that really struggled with injuries, the Niners weren't overcome with injuries to the extent that it made them a pathetic offense or a pathetic defense. In fact, they were still pedestrian, could still score some points. Of course, the Vegas estimated wins going into last year were 10.5 for the Niners. Given such an injury-plagued season, that was going to be unrealistic. So they ended the season going 6-10, but 7-9 ATS. So outperformed from an ATS perspective vis-a-vis straight up record. Average margin of victory only -1 point. So played competitively. Average cover just -1 point as well. So we're competitive, of course, also from the spread, even though they went 7-9, kind of could have went either way. Realized strength of schedule 14th. So again, wasn't an easy schedule, wasn't a super tough schedule. What are some of your kind of key takeaways from last year, Zach?
Well, one of my takeaways is, I think, is a testament to, how good of a coaching staff and organization 49ers really is. Last year was kind of an exemplary performance because, it's easy when everything's good and everything's easy. It's easy to assume that is the outlier is the reality. But I think this downside outlier shows that, 49ers still won 6 games with 3 different quarterbacks, 5 different running backs, an entire injured defense throughout the season, starting very early in the season too. They lost George Kittle, they lost Bosa. They lost all their best players.
Yeah, Deebo Samuel missed the first 3 games, and then I think he only played 7 games total.
Yeah, so to me, the biggest testament to the Niners from last year is just how impressive the team management was, because once we get to the stats on the next page, you'll see that, the 49ers offense was still decent, and the defense was still decent. And to be able to pull that off with a bunch of backups essentially throughout the season just is a very
who
good,
lacked chemistry as well.
All
kind of had to be an ongoing kind of rotation of different players So it's trying to learn how to play together on a rolling basis.
And in a COVID year, so there wasn't even the reps in a preseason to get these guys acclimated to the team. So yeah, that's my biggest takeaway. Is that it really solidified my high, I guess, consideration for Kyle Shanahan's specifically, and obviously kind of like the GM and front office as well.
It also speaks to their depth, you know, to be able to still trot on the field second, third, fourth stringers again and still be competitive.
Yeah.
So most teams, you know, who were ravaged with injuries, especially at the quarterback position, you know, could barely put together competitive games. So I'm thinking like the Eagles or the Cowboys or even the Bengals.
Yeah.
You know, just didn't have, you know, we're constantly going through a rotating cycle of different quarterbacks, and you would have some just real nasty, ugly performances that were hard to watch. But the Niners always, you know, didn't really matter who they were playing, especially from a spread perspective. You know, we're always you know, an eligible option because of such a strong coaching staff. What I am concerned about, though, is everyone just assumes that the Niners are going to be healthy this year and that they're going to therefore return to form from 2019 when they went to the Super Bowl, played the Niners or played the Chiefs and were winning for 85% of that game. And that's going to be the Niners team that we see this coming year. And so we can talk about more about that as we move on. But I think just, yeah, the takeaways from last year is even if the Niners get ravaged by injuries again this year, which is not to say that they aren't going to, maybe not to this extent, because again, the COVID year also made teams extra vulnerable to injuries. And that's one of the reasons why we saw so many across so many different teams last year. But the Niners have been in the bottom half of the league when it comes to injuries. So looking at starters who've missed games for every single year that Kyle Shanahan has been coached. So it's like, what's the strength and conditioning program look like out in California over there in San Francisco? Like what's going on? Because there's been a pattern of this team kind of dealing with injuries. And obviously 2019 was probably, you know, one of the years that they were the healthiest. But I think it's unwise to look at the 49ers going into 2021 and start to position your bets around the assumption that this team is going to be healthy like 2019, when in fact, the bias should be that this team is going to deal with injuries again.
Well, and to speak on that real quick is, I believe last I heard, you know, they've had a lot of injuries in the offseason already via the defense. So, you know, to your point, they may not be out of the woods quite yet as far as dealing with key players being injured and in and out of lineups. So, but anything as far as the chart from last year, it looks like when looking at it, I didn't see much as far as any kind of signal based. And for those who can't see it, it doesn't look like there's much support beyond 15-20% throughout the season, like maybe a couple times. So it seems like, you know, obviously probably due to the injury bug, that the 49ers were not really a bet on team compared to other teams in the NFL. Besides maybe a couple outlier weeks and maybe a little bit later in the season. But yeah, through the first half of the season, it was pretty steady under 15% support.
Yeah, they weren't a very popular team in the betting markets pretty much across the whole season. We can see that they've pretty much eclipsed the 20% support mark only maybe 3 times, decisively twice. It looks like week 15 they got close there, but almost over the course of the whole first half of the season, pretty much consistently around 15% or lower. So when you don't have that volatility in market expectations, overshooting to the upside and overshooting to the downside, and you're trying to capture, mispricings. You need that type of volatility for kind of the strategies that we've been talking about to be profitable. And we can just kind of see across the Niners in 2020, there just wasn't the same type of volatility that we've seen from other teams.
Yeah. And so I don't think there's much to take away from this from last year. So if we look at real quick before we move ahead to 2021, just some general stats to kind of touch on. Like we said to open, the offense was, scoring 23 points per game. The defense was giving up 24 points per game. So, they really were close to an average team despite the injury bug. But as far
right, so outperform, given the player personnel on the field.
And from a player personnel perspective, going into the season, you would have to think that if we tallied every team's starters per minutes played, the Niners had what you would have suspected would have been like one of the worst teams in the NFL last year, just from a personnel standpoint. Obviously, I think, like you said, maybe the backups are better than people think because the management knows how to source good players. But going into the season, you would have been like, wow, that team is awful. They should be ranked 31st next to the Jets, but they weren't. So, it's a good thing to keep in the back pocket for later.
Hey, Nick Mullins, again, played the most games for the Niners at quarterback last year. And he is now the third stringer, maybe, on the Eagles. So he might not even make the team. He didn't look good in the first preseason game. And so it just kind of goes to show. And now you got CJ Beathard. He's also a backup on the Jags. So just kind of the Kyle Shanahan magic of really making the best out of an unfortunate situation and kind of getting the best out of his players, is really impressive with what they've been able to do. And now, of course, maybe if we move on to the next slide and kind of talk a little bit about some of the changes that they made this year, not a lot of dramatic change, I would say. Obviously, the key addition was the trade up in the draft, trading two future first-round draft picks for and a third-round pick for essentially what turned out to be Trey Lance from North Dakota State. Only played a year of college football. Didn't play last year. Played one game due to the COVID and the cancellation of the season. And so there's a lot of questions just around, just limited game tape, limited on the field performance. Obviously, Trey Lance, 6'4", 260 pounds, looks like an ideal physical specimen for the type of quarterback that you want in today's game. He's mobile, he's got, a strong arm. Again, I can't be bullish or bearish on him. I just feel like there's not. What I would say is I probably trust that the Niners levered up to take him, which means that they must have had a lot of conviction. And obviously they have far more data than I do. And I trust kind of just the overall evaluation skill set of the Niners front office and of Kyle Shanahan. So I'll lean towards they know what they're doing.
Well, and to that point, I just had a kind of an epiphany based on thinking through the Trey Lance pick for this organization. And that is, he kind of reminds me of, and it's more so applying to Justin Fields, compared to maybe an RG3, that maybe he does come in and he has a great year this year, but then maybe he bombs the future, kind of like a one and done QB with all the hype. But maybe Trey Lance, because wasn't Kyle Shanahan the OC of Washington with Mike Shanahan when they drafted RG3? And remember, they drafted, to spite Dan Snyder, more or less, to, got Kirk Cousins in the third round, that same draft, which is completely bonkers when you really think about the context of that. But, to go for this type of quarterback without this, he didn't play last year. He only played 1 year of college. This prototypical, like, ooh, he's got all the sexy things that a quarterback should have type stuff. For Kyle Shanahan to do that when him and his dad basically were like, we don't want RG3, we want Kirk Cousins. It makes me think that the whole Kyle Shanahan drafts the same type, like he loves the same type of Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins type quarterback. He basically threw that out. I mean, Trey Lance is a totally different style quarterback. And so to me, it suggests that besides over leveraging to like get Trey Lance and surprising everyone who thought they were going to get Mac Jones, is like there's something there because of the history of Kyle Shanahan's quarterbacks, and then why this quarterback, why now? And so either it was a complete desperation move, which seems odd because, like you said, two years ago, they were in the Super Bowl. If they're healthy, they could be right back in the mix. But they didn't. They basically mortgaged their future and said, we're going all in, chips all in, even with an already decent, good team with good coach, good organization, on Trey Lance, and probably paid too high of a price to move up that high. They probably didn't even need to do that. That's how bad they wanted him. So regardless of what we think he is or isn't going to be, I think, based on their moves and their history, that he is a potential more Russell Wilson than RG3. Obviously, Russell Wilson's like 5'10". But as far as like leading a team for a decade type quarterback. So my question is, when is Jimmy G going to get traded?
Yeah, and this trade, the fact that they have Jimmy G, who I feel like, again, he can't stay healthy, so that's the primary kind of downside of him, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Niners organization felt comfortable making this type of trade. Also, this is the type of trade that we've been seeing more and more often in the NFL, and I feel like most teams have gotten way less than like they've rolled the dice. Trey Lance obviously has massive upside. Like, so this could be a great trade, especially relative to the Rams basically did this for Jalen Rams. The Bears did it for Khalil Mack. And not that those aren't great players and that those aren't players that made material contributions to their team, but neither one of those players is going to change the trajectory of an organization. Yeah. Obviously, the quarterback position can. Yeah. So by adding Trey Lance, maybe it doesn't work out, but it's not this crazy sort of overly leveraged trade, desperation that you talk about, maybe could have been seen as desperate and too aggressive 5-6 years ago. This is a trade that people are making more and more often in the league. And also teams are getting sharper at being able to isolate talent later on in drafts as well. So again, like, I don't feel strongly one way or the other on Trey Lance. Again, I would lean towards, he looks like he should be a great quarterback. That's certainly not sufficient, but I trust smart people. So, and I think Kyle Shanahan and again, the Niners front office is one of the sharper personnel managers in the league. And so I'll lean towards them. What I would say is because you still have Jimmy G though, and you still plan on, at least the plan is to start him this year, creates a weird environment of where the writing's basically on the wall. Like, Jimmy G, like, you're not the long-term answer here. You're probably, a lame duck quarterback. Yeah. Maybe you get this year. If the Niners win the Super Bowl with Jimmy G, he's not coming back next year. Yeah. Because what they're basically trying to do, I feel like, is just do a Chiefs Alex Smith with Mahomes on the bench. And it really doesn't matter what you do this year. Like, you're gone next year because we got the futures, sitting on the sidelines. And it doesn't matter what you do this year. Basically, we just want to extract the most value from you. We want to put you on a pedestal, show you off to the league, and try to trade you and get as much in return as possible. I don't know how motivating that is for the player.
But to answer that real quick, I think that's definitely motivating, just because if I know I'm going to be, traded, like go sign a new contract, I may be playing more for myself, but I'm definitely going to try to prove them wrong. I think that's probably the greatest motivation in general for most people is.
But are you going to try and put yourself in positions of injury and really go out and sacrifice your health for this organization to win games when you're not going to be even a part of it anymore?
Hold on. But
basically you're on the outside looking in right now, and you're gone. You are gone.
What?
So let's sacrifice it all. He's made his money.
But from two sides of it. One, just from a competitor standpoint, it depends what type of competitor Jimmy G really is. If he's a true competitor, it doesn't really matter. You're always competing and you're in it to win it. On the other side, like I mentioned, I think if he's, he wants to prove him wrong. He wants to show, just like anybody, let's use Aaron Rodgers as the example. Jordan Love, you drafted this fool. I'm the best quarterback of all time. Are you dumb? Are you dumb? I'm in my prime. Just give me some weapons and I'm going to become MVP and take you to NFC Championship game. Mm-hmm. So,
although I think that's a far different dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. But I think in Jimmy G's case, mentality wise, the only way I think it comes into play, kind of to your point, is as the season drags on, and if the team is somewhat injured, the offensive line gets beat up, and the writing's on the wall then, but then at that point he might be benched anyways. So to me, it's not relevant ultimately.
But so I would say the broader macro call here is in as we kind of move on and look at the schedule does look favorable. But what I would say is the takeaway here from me is I'm bearish on the Niners because of this weird dynamic in the locker room. And if Trey Lance looks even decently good in the preseason and puts even more pressure on kind of him looking and just kind of tempting Kyle Shanahan and the rest of the organization, be let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's just put him in. That it's not going to be a disaster, but they're not going to go over 10.5 wins. So when we look at what the Niners are priced at now, these are overly bullish estimations in my view. So Vegas estimated wins 10.5. Again, we talked about estimated strength of schedule, though, ostensibly 32nd. So has a very attractive schedule. So that it can help. But we know that's not always a accurate, post hoc realization of what the actual strength of schedule could be. These teams could be better or worse, etc. Regardless, I think that, Trey Lance, so we've already seen one preseason game and he put together some pretty great highlights. But if you watch the game, which I did, he got sacked 4 times. So, and almost all of them were quarterback sacks, holding out of the ball too long. That's fair. It's not like necessarily an egregious criticism. This is a rookie in the very first game. The game is fast, comes up at them a little bit sooner than expected. They get sacked. We kind of saw that across the board and through a lot of rookies in the first preseason game. But again, he threw a long touchdown. He led another touchdown drive. And that was basically the main kind of mainstream takeaways. They don't talk about the 4 sacks. They don't talk about the fumble that they then recovered. So again, it didn't really show up meaningfully in the stats. And then also he should have thrown a pick that was just dropped by the cornerback. And again, it's just for preseason game. So I'm not trying to get ahead of it and like say, like, man, he's going to suck. What I'm saying is the narrative from the first preseason game is, damn, like they need to get Trey Lance in there ASAP. And that is a false narrative. So if there is any sort of pressure to put him in there prematurely, it's, again, he's going to be able to put some highlights together for sure. Because again, it's still Kyle Shanahan. Again, look what he's been able to do with Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, etc. So, and also he seems like very excited to use a mobile quarterback with CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins, Jimmy G. You know, they're all kind of like replicas of one another. So this seems like an exciting new tool for him to use. And it is exciting to potentially see how he could use that tool. And again, they have potent kind of wide receivers at their disposal. Great scheming. Absolutely. But 10.5 wins?
No. I think you're right. I think to your point, from the 10.5 win standpoint, I mean, they also play in probably, I think, is what's going to be the toughest division in football, which is going to be hard to get to 10 wins anyways. Is you might as well then, I mean, what, to make the playoffs is minus 200? I like the no at plus 150 actually. Yeah, I think you're right. I guess the thing is they do the 32nd rank schedule. So if that, like to your point, if that stays 32nd by the end of the season, so I guess that's their pathway to getting over 10.5 and getting to the playoffs. But I think you're right. They're just the kind of, they're still having some injury issues. And again, they could just be the players they choose have a lot of upside, have a lot of talent, and a lot of the reason they're able to get them is because teams don't want to take the risk on those types of injury-prone players, right? Like that can be a part of the equation. But yeah, you're right. I don't think I could take a Niners over or playoff run. It's just there's too much, I think, volatility within the team, and then obviously with the quarterback situation, especially.
Yeah.
But
but I mean, hey, the Niners could still be an exciting team to watch and to bet on. And again, giving a strong, deep-armed, mobile quarterback to Kyle Shanahan in this offense seems exciting. And I would be maybe, again, and if we see positive signs from them, could be bullish longer term. But the expectation for this year is already now so high. This is one of the biggest wins we've seen.
Yeah, it's like fifth. I think fifth. There's only like 5 teams with bigger win totals.
That's
but again,
to your point, playing in one of the most difficult divisions in football. I mean, again, they're playing the Texans, Lions. So if we look through the schedule, Lions, Eagles, all right, so easier.
Yeah.
Kind of, if anything, this plays against them, the sense of, well, if you're not just going to put Trey Lance out there right away, well, then you're going to give Jimmy G these easier games. First of all, I do think that, like we've talked about, I think maybe with some previous teams, maybe the Saints, we've talked about how they could use like this like weird kind of hybrid quarterback rotation type thing. I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners maybe didn't do a full quarterback rotation type scheme, but like, I just feel like Kyle Shanahan, they did all these draft picks. There's all this media hype. All the fans want Trey Lance. Jimmy G is injury prone. Like, he's just looking for any way possible to get Trey Lance onto the field. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of leverage different types of maybe really creative and imaginative play calling, kind of using a dual kind of quarterback scenario.
And I mean, I think Sean Payton has kind of proven that it's possible to make it work, like kind of putting in a Taysom Hill, who's not even really a good quarterback at all, but putting in that kind of, alt quarterback at times, just switch up how defenses have to play your offense and to game plan, which, if you have to game plan for multiple things, it takes away your prep time for your kind of a game plan with Drew Brees, right? So yeah, maybe that's a new trend that we're going to see more of this year, is a willingness for teams to maybe, put in the quicker young gun with quick feet type quarterback. But yeah, as far as
and when I look at this schedule, I don't see. It's like this balance. It's either they're playing one of the worst teams in the NFL or one of the best teams in the NFL. And so, because they got the Lions, the Eagles, the Jags, the Texans, Bengals.
Falcons.
I mean, the Falcons are not going to be the fourth worst team in the NFL.
Or in the NFC South.
They're going to be much better. And again, you still got Seahawks twice, Rams twice, obviously, Cardinals twice. And then outside of that, still have the Packers, the Colts, especially by week 7, they're playing the Colts. So Carson Wentz, if he, again, it's unknown when he's gonna play week 1, is he not? If he doesn't play week 1, he probably doesn't play until week 4 or 5, whatever. He's definitely going to be playing by week 7. So not an ideal time to be playing the Colts. I'm slightly more bullish on the Bears than the market. We're both a lot more bullish on the Vikings than the market. So, this is not the easiest schedule. Yeah. It's not a tough schedule. It definitely provides, it's amenable to having a transition year.
Yeah.
Which is why I think that provides an opportunity for you to, really start to incorporate Trey Lance in meaningful ways. I mean, why not? Why delay the inevitable?
Yeah. Well, and real quick to kind of I think wrap up on this is, at least these preseason spread lines seem very high in favor of the Niners. Basically, to your point, at the beginning of the recording, that the assumption is the Niners are back. They're the 13-3 Super Bowl team, which again, preseason that year, nobody had that except, well, you predicted it, but except Brett. So the lines are, in my opinion, way too high. Like I think more of these should be closer to 3 or under. But yeah, the assumption that they're 6-point favorites versus the Cardinals. I mean, Niners may be the worst team in this division and still win 9 games, but they may be the worst team in the division. So, yeah.
Indeed.
I don't have much more.
All right. I think that wraps up this episode. So we're clearly both kind of leaning towards the under on the Niners at that 10.5 win estimate. So thanks everyone for listening and watching on the live stream. Definitely be sure to check us out on SportfolioKings.com, where we'll be releasing a whole host of really interesting and cool tools to help you make sharper, more informed decisions in contests like the Super Contest and Circa, which we also just recently posted a video on our YouTube channel to help you decide which contest is right for you. So be sure to check that out. And this is going to be a beta version of the platform. There's still a lot of work. We have so many different ideas that are in the works. And so it's going to be a platform that we're going to continue to be building out over the course of the season. And we hope, that you'll be able to join right along with us, provide us some really constructive feedback. This is going to be our preseason year. There's going to be a lot of, changes, a lot of fluidity. But a lot to look forward to. So again, thanks for listening. We'll see you on the other side. That's the closing bell.
And of course, King me.